The 12 human children disappeared at exactly 09:17 in the morning, and for the first 30 seconds, nobody on Earth understood what had happened, because there had been no explosion. No warning, no visible attack, and no enemy fleet in the sky. One moment the children were inside the Terran Colonial Academy on Luna Station 7, laughing as they prepared for their first school expedition outside the lunar habitat, and the next moment, 12 empty seats remained inside the classroom, their teachers frozen in confusion as every security camera simultaneously went black. The children had been chosen for the Academy's most advanced exchange program, 12 boys and girls between the ages of 8 and 13, born on Earth but raised partly across humanity's expanding colonies, and they represented something the Terran government considered sacred. The first generation of children who had grown up believing that the stars belonged to them. But at year 9 to 18, a strange signal appeared across every communication network on Luna Station 7, and a voice spoke in a language no human computer could immediately translate. "We have taken your young, do not interfere." The station commander, Colonel Elena Ward, heard the message inside the command center and immediately ordered every security team to locate the children. But within seconds, another transmission arrived. "This is not an attack, this is a demonstration. Humanity will surrender 12 children, and the galaxy will learn that Terrans are not above the laws of the civilized worlds." Colonel Ward stared at the screen in disbelief, because nobody had ever spoken to humanity that way. Not after the Terran expansion wars, not after the First Contact crisis, and certainly not after Earth became the largest independent military power in the known galaxy. But the children were gone, and that changed everything. Ward demanded a trace on the signal. Technicians worked frantically while security officers sealed every corridor. Then a young communications specialist suddenly shouted, "Colonel, I've found something." Ward rushed toward his station. "What is it?" The specialist enlarged a strange energy pattern appearing above the lunar surface. "There's a distortion near the old mining sector. Something came through here." Ward immediately ordered drones into the area. But before they reached the coordinates, the distortion vanished, leaving behind only 12 small metallic objects scattered across the lunar dust. Each one contained a child's identification bracelet, and beneath them was a single message burned into the surface: "Do not follow." Ward stared at those words for several seconds before asking the question everyone was thinking. Who took them? The answer came from Earth's military intelligence within minutes. An unknown extraterrestrial civilization known as the Ver Dominion, a species that had never openly contacted humanity, but had been observed at the edge of Terran territory for nearly 20 years. The Ver were known throughout the galaxy as an ancient civilization with advanced transportation technology, but they had never attacked Earth. They had never threatened humanity, and until that morning, nobody believed they were interested in Terran citizens. President Adrian Cole was immediately awakened inside the Terran Presidential Complex in Washington, D.C., and when he entered the emergency command room, General Marcus Hale was already waiting for him. 12 children, the president said quietly. Hale nodded, confirmed, sir. Taken from Luna Station 7. President Cole looked at the enormous tactical display showing the solar system. Where are they? Hale answered. We don't know. The Ver erased their trail. Cole turned toward him. Then find it, General. Hale hesitated, sir. We've already activated every deep space sensor we have. If the Ver used their normal transit technology, we should have detected the jump signature. But there's nothing. Cole stared at the display, then asked, What do they want? Hale placed a data tablet on the table. Their transmission suggests they want humanity to surrender 12 children as some kind of political demonstration. President Cole's expression hardened. They chose the wrong children. Hale looked at him, sir. With respect, there are no right children to take. Cole shook his head. That's not what I mean. Those children are enrolled in the Academy's Horizon program. Hale went silent because he understood immediately. The Horizon program was not an ordinary school program. The 12 children had been selected because each possessed unusual neurological compatibility with the newest Terran navigation systems. They were among the first humans capable of interfacing directly with quantum communication networks. But their abilities were classified, and the Ver should never have known about them. Hale looked back at the president. How did they know? Cole answered. That's what worries me. Suddenly, every screen in the command center went dark. Then a single image appeared, 12 children standing inside a massive alien chamber. surrounded by tall blue-skinned beings with elongated faces and enormous black eyes. The children were frightened but unharmed, and one little girl was holding the hand of another boy as the aliens watched them silently. Then a Vare figure stepped toward the camera. "My name is Commander Serac, and your children are alive." President Cole moved closer to the screen. "Where are they?" Serac answered. "Beyond your borders. In a place your ships cannot reach." Cole said, "Return them immediately." Serac tilted his head. "We will. When humanity agrees to our conditions." General Hale stepped forward. "What conditions?" Serac looked directly into the camera. "You will dismantle the Terran military fleet stationed beyond your home system, withdraw from 12 disputed star systems, and surrender all research related to quantum navigation." Hale's expression changed. The Vare weren't simply kidnapping children. They were attempting to cripple humanity's ability to defend its colonies and travel through deep space. President Cole asked, "And if we refuse?" Serac replied. "Then the 12 children will become permanent residents of the Vare Dominion." One of the children suddenly stepped forward, a small boy named Noah, and shouted, "Don't listen to them, we're not afraid." A Vare guard immediately pulled him backward. But before the transmission ended, another girl looked directly into the camera and whispered something that only the Terran intelligence system detected. "They're scared of you." The screen went black. General Hale looked at the president. "Sir, did you hear that?" Cole nodded. "I did." Hale turned toward the intelligence officers. "Pull every record we have on the Vare, every encounter, every unexplained disappearance, every classified transmission, everything." Then he looked at the main tactical display again. "Something is wrong," President Cole asked. "What?" Hale answered. "They didn't take 12 children because they think we're weak. They took them because they think those children are important." Cole stared at the 12 empty positions on the Academy's security map. Then his expression changed as a new realization struck him. "How long has it been since they disappeared?" Hale checked the time, 31 minutes, Cole nodded slowly. "Then we have a problem, because the Vare just made the biggest mistake of their existence." Hale looked at him. "What mistake?" President Cole turned toward the sealed military command chamber beneath the presidential complex, the chamber that had not been opened in 19 years, and gave an order that would soon be heard across every Terran colony. "Wake the fleet." Hale froze, "Sir." "The entire fleet." Cole looked directly at him. "Every ship, every carrier, every battleship, every reserve vessel, and every weapon platform." Hale hesitated. "The galaxy will see it." Cole answered quietly. "Let them. Because 12 human children were taken from Earth, and humanity was done negotiating." The order to wake the fleet traveled through the Terran military network like a shockwave, and within seconds commanders across Earth, Luna, Mars, and hundreds of distant colonies received the same encrypted message. "Priority, Omega. All Terran forces activate." But the officers who received it understood something the rest of the galaxy did not. Priority Omega had not been used in 19 years, and the last time it had been activated, humanity had nearly gone to war with 3 civilizations at once. General Marcus Hale entered the underground command chamber beneath the presidential complex, while President Adrian Cole followed behind him. The enormous doors closed with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire facility, and inside the chamber, thousands of dormant systems began powering up. Tactical displays illuminated one after another. Classified star maps appeared, and enormous holographic projections showed the hidden military infrastructure humanity had built during decades of peace. Hale stared at the display in disbelief. "Sir, I thought most of these facilities had been decommissioned." Cole answered, "They were never decommissioned. They were hidden one by one." Terran shipyards across the solar system awakened. Ships that had been disguised as civilian cargo vessels changed configuration. Mining platforms opened armored hangars, and enormous underground launch tunnels beneath Mars began releasing warships into orbit. The galaxy had always assumed Earth's military consisted of a few hundred battleships and a defensive fleet scattered around its colonies. But that assumption had been carefully maintained by the Terran government. Because humanity had learned a lesson after its first contact with the galaxy: never reveal everything you have. Meanwhile, inside the Vare facility, the 12 children were being watched closely. Commander Serac stood behind a transparent barrier observing them. But something about the situation was beginning to worry him. The children were not crying anymore. They were sitting together in a small chamber and whispering among themselves. Noah looked at the others and said, "They are coming." An older girl named Maya shook her head. How do you know? Noah pointed toward the ceiling. Because they stopped pretending to be calm, Maya looked toward the Vare guards and noticed something strange. Several of them were constantly checking their communication devices. Another child whispered, "They are afraid." Noah nodded. "My father told me once that when adults are scared, they talk more quietly." The children fell silent as the door opened and Commander Serac entered. "You will remain calm," he said. "We have no intention of harming you." Noah looked directly at him. "Then why did you take us?" Serac hesitated, because the answer was more complicated than he wanted the children to understand. "Your government must understand that the Vare Dominion has the power to reach Earth," Noah replied. "But you haven't." Serac frowned. "What?" Noah continued. "If you really had the power to reach Earth whenever you wanted, you wouldn't need us." The commander stared at the child, and for the first time, he realized the boy understood far more than expected. Before Serac could answer, the entire facility shook. Every light went dark for 3 seconds, then emergency systems activated. A Vare officer rushed into the room. "Commander, we've detected a Terran transmission." Serac immediately asked, "Where?" The officer looked terrified. "Everywhere." The message was being transmitted through every Vare communication network. Every satellite, every military channel, and even systems that should have been isolated. Then the Terran president's voice echoed through the facility. "Commander Serac, this is President Adrian Cole of Earth. You have taken 12 human children. Return them immediately." The Vare commander attempted to shut down the transmission, but it continued. "You have 3 hours. Not 3 hours to negotiate. Not 3 hours to make demands. 3 hours to return our children. After that, humanity will come for them." Serac looked at his officers and one whispered, "They cannot know where we are." Serac answered, "They don't need to, because the transmission contained something else, a series of numbers, coordinates, and a countdown. And when Vare scientists analyzed them, they discovered that the coordinates were not pointing toward their current location. They were pointing toward every major Vare military installation across the sector. The Terrans had somehow mapped the Dominion's entire defensive network. Serac immediately contacted the Vare High Council, and the response came within seconds. "How did humanity discover our locations?" Serac answered. "We don't know," the council demanded. "Are the children safe?" Serac looked through the transparent barrier at the 12 humans. "Yes, then keep them alive, because if anything happens to them, Earth will become our greatest enemy." But the council made another decision. "Move the children." Serac looked shocked. "To where?" The council replied, "The sanctuary world." Serac's expression changed. "No, that system is forbidden," the council answered. "It is the only place Earth cannot reach." Serac knew the truth. The sanctuary world was protected by an ancient energy barrier that had existed long before the Vare Dominion. Even Vare ships could enter only through a single controlled gateway. But before they could move the children, another alarm sounded. This time every Vare officer rushed toward the command center. A massive Terran fleet had appeared at the edge of their territory. The Vare sensors initially detected several hundred ships, then several thousand, then tens of thousands, and finally the numbers stopped updating because their computers could no longer process the incoming signals. Serac stared at the tactical display. "How many?" the sensor officer whispered. "We cannot determine the exact number, but the fleet extends beyond the sensor range." Serac felt his stomach tighten. "How long have they been traveling?" The officer looked at him. "That's the problem." "Commander, they haven't." Serac turned toward him. "What do you mean?" The officer swallowed. "They were not detected entering the system. They were already here, outside our sensor network, hidden in deep space, waiting." Serac immediately realized the truth. The Terrans had not spent the last 2 hours traveling toward the Vare. They had spent those 2 hours surrounding them. President Cole's 3-hour deadline had not been a warning. It had been a countdown for the Vare to realize that the trap was already complete. Inside Earth's flagship, General Hale stood before the fleet command display. Thousands of Terran vessels were now positioned throughout the Vare sector. But he knew they were still missing one thing: the children's exact location. A young intelligence officer approached him. "General, we've found the signal." Hale turned immediately. "Where?" The officer displayed a faint energy signature. "It is coming from a Vare command facility. But there's something strange." Hale studied the data. "What?" the officer answered. "The children are not there anymore. They've been moved." Hale's expression hardened. "Can you track them?" "Not yet. but we have identified their destination. Hale looked at the coordinates and immediately recognized the system. The sanctuary world, he whispered. Another officer asked. What is it? Hale answered. A place even the Ver are afraid to enter. Then President Cole's voice came through the command channel. General status, Hale replied. We found them. But they're moving the children to a protected world, Cole asked. Can we reach it? Hale stared at the impossible energy barrier surrounding the system. Not with the fleet we have here. Cole was silent for a moment, then asked the question Hale had been hoping he would not ask. What would it take? Hale looked toward the sealed tactical display, the one containing humanity's oldest and most dangerous technology, and answered, We would have to activate the ship that was never supposed to leave Earth. Cole immediately understood. The legendary Terran vessel that had been classified for more than 50 years. The first ship capable of crossing any known energy barrier, and the only vessel humanity had never publicly admitted existed. Cole took a breath, then gave the order, Wake the horizon. And somewhere deep beneath the surface of Mars, an enormous underground hangar began opening for the first time in decades, revealing a ship so massive that the surrounding mountains had been built around it. Its engine slowly began to glow, and across the galaxy, every Ver sensor suddenly detected a new Terran signal, one that contained only a single sentence. You took 12 children, so we brought everything. The first Terran warship crossed the edge of Ver-controlled space at 11:41, and by then the galaxy had already begun to understand that something unprecedented was happening, because the Terran fleet had not announced its arrival, had not requested permission to enter Ver territory, and had not sent diplomats ahead of it. Instead, thousands of human warships emerged from hyperspace in complete silence, forming enormous formations around the outer Ver colonies, their engines burning with controlled blue light as every vessel received the same order from General Marcus Hale. Do not fire unless fired upon, but make sure they know you are here. The Ver Dominion detected the fleet almost immediately, and their military command center erupted into confusion, because the number of Terran vessels was far beyond anything their intelligence services had predicted. One Ver officer stared at the tactical display and whispered, There are more ships than we have in our entire eastern sector. Commander Serac stood behind him without speaking, watching the human fleet spread across the darkness. Then a communication officer approached. Commander, Earth is requesting a channel. Serac looked toward the display and answered. Open it. General Hale appeared on the screen. His expression calm. Commander Serac, return the children. Serac replied. You entered Ver territory with a military force, Hale answered. You kidnapped 12 children from a Terran facility. Serac shook his head. We did not kidnap them. We relocated them for their protection. Hale's eyes narrowed. Protection from what? Serac hesitated, and that hesitation told Hale more than any answer could have. Hale leaned forward. You know something about those children? Serac finally replied. We know what they are capable of. Hale responded. They are children. Serac answered. They are 12 humans whose minds are compatible with technology that predates your civilization. Hale went silent. And behind him, intelligence officers immediately began pulling classified records. The Ver commander continued. Your government does not understand what the Horizon children can become. But my people do, because we have seen this before. Hale asked. Seen what? Serac looked directly into the camera. A species that discovers quantum navigation, connects consciousness to machines, and begins traveling beyond the boundaries of physical space. Hale's expression hardened. What happens to that species? Serac replied. It disappears. The communication ended. But Hale immediately ordered his intelligence team to investigate every word. Within minutes, they uncovered a disturbing pattern. Over the last 8,000 years, at least 19 civilizations had disappeared after developing technology similar to Earth's Horizon systems. Every civilization had experienced the same sequence: rapid technological advancement, quantum communication, experimental consciousness interfaces, then sudden disappearance, and in every case, the Ver had been present nearby. Hale stared at the evidence and realized the kidnapping might be connected to something far larger than politics. Meanwhile, aboard the Ver facility where the children were being held, Noah and the other students had begun noticing strange details about their surroundings. The aliens had locked them inside a secure chamber, but they had not hurt them. They had provided food, water, blankets, and medical examinations, and several Ver scientists constantly monitored the children from behind transparent barriers. One scientist approached the observation window and watched a young girl named Maya staring at the machines around her. Maya looked at him and asked, "Why are you scared?" The scientist froze. Maya continued, "You keep checking the same machine every 5 minutes, and every time it makes that sound, you look at us." The scientist exchanged a glance with another Vare, then quietly asked, "How did you know?" Maya shrugged. "Because you're thinking about it." The scientist immediately stepped away from the glass, and for the first time, the children understood that the aliens weren't afraid of their physical abilities. They were afraid of what the children could do with their minds. Noah walked toward Maya and whispered, "What did you do?" Maya answered, "Nothing, I just listened." Suddenly, every light inside the facility flickered. A strange vibration passed through the walls, and the 12 children heard something that none of the Vare scientists could hear. A voice distant and almost impossible to understand, speaking directly inside their minds. "Wake up," the children looked at one another. Then the voice continued, "Your parents are coming." Maya closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, the entire room around her appeared different. She could see energy flowing through the walls, pathways of light moving beneath the metal floor, and thousands of machines connected together like one enormous nervous system. She whispered, "This place is alive." The Vare scientist suddenly rushed into the room, ordering the children to remain still. But Maya looked at the central machine and said, "You shouldn't have brought us here." The lead scientist asked, "Why?" Maya replied, "Because now it knows where you are." The scientist turned pale, and at that exact moment, every Vare alarm across the facility activated outside. Terran warships had begun moving deeper into Vare space, but they were not attacking military targets. Instead, they were disabling communication relays and surveillance satellites, creating a path directly toward the facility holding the children. General Hale received a report from the fleet commander. "Sir, we've located the facility." Hale asked, "How long?" The commander answered, 40 minutes. Hale looked at the tactical display. 40 minutes was too long, because another signal had just appeared. Something massive was approaching the Vare system from beyond the known frontier. Hale asked, "What is that?" The answer came slowly, "We don't know, but it isn't Vare, and it isn't human." The signal grew stronger, and every sensor aboard the Terran fleet began detecting the same impossible energy pattern. The Vare suddenly opened a galaxy-wide emergency channel, and Commander Serac appeared again, this time without his usual confidence. "General Hale, you must stop your fleet." Hale answered, "Not until the children are returned." Serac shook his head. "You don't understand. The children are not the target anymore." Hale stared at him. "Then what is?" Serac looked toward the darkness outside the command room. "They are." And suddenly every Terran ship detected something emerging from hyperspace. Enormous black structures appearing one after another, each larger than a Terran battleship, each completely silent, each surrounded by a field that distorted space itself. Hale watched the tactical display fill with unknown contacts. Then one of the structures transmitted a message, not in any known alien language, but somehow every human computer translated it automatically. "We have found the children." Hale looked at Serac. "What are they?" Serac answered with a voice filled with fear. "The reason the Vare took them," Hale asked. "Explain." Serac said, 20 years ago, we discovered an ancient warning buried beneath one of our oldest worlds. It said that one day 12 human children would appear, and when they did, an ancient intelligence would awaken. We believed the children were the key to stopping it, so we took them before the intelligence could find them." Hale stared at him, "But it found them anyway." Serac nodded. "Yes, because the children were never the key. They were the signal inside the Vare facility." The 12 children suddenly stood together as the lights around them turned white. Maya looked toward the ceiling and whispered, "They're here." Noah asked, "Who?" Maya answered, "I don't know, but they're not coming for us. They're coming through us." The walls began shaking. Vare soldiers rushed into the chamber, but before they could reach the children, a massive energy field appeared around them, pushing the soldiers backward, and then the voice inside the children's minds spoke again. "Humanity has arrived." The Vare scientists looked toward the ceiling in terror, because they had expected the Terran fleet to attack from outside. But instead, a small human shuttle suddenly appeared inside the facility itself, bypassing every defense system. Its doors opened, and General Hale stepped onto the platform with a team of Terran special forces. The Vare soldiers raised their weapons, but Hale held up one hand. "We're not here to fight you. We're here for the children." Commander Serac appeared on a nearby screen and Hale looked at him. "You knew this would happen," Serac replied. "I hoped it wouldn't," Hale answered. "Then tell me how to get them out." Serac hesitated before saying, "You can't." Hale frowned. "Why?" Serac looked toward the 12 children. "Because the thing that has awakened is already connected to them, and if you take them away now, it will follow you home." Hale turned toward Maya, who was standing silently in the center of the chamber, and asked, "Maya, can you hear me?" She nodded. Hale asked, "What is happening?" Maya looked at him with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Something is coming for Earth." And then every screen inside the facility displayed the same image. Earth, surrounded by an enormous shadow emerging from hyperspace, while a final message appeared across the screen. "3 hours ago you took 12 children. Now humanity has come for them. But you should have asked what was coming with them." The image of Earth surrounded by the enormous shadow appeared on every screen inside the VAIR facility, and for several seconds, nobody spoke. Because the object approaching humanity's homeworld was so large that the tactical systems could not even calculate its dimensions. General Hale stared at the display while Maya stood behind him with the other 11 children, their faces illuminated by the pale light coming from the screens. Commander Serac's voice finally broke the silence. "That is the reason we took them." Hale turned toward the screen. "You knew this was coming," Serac answered. "We knew something was coming, but we did not know when, or what form it would take," Hale demanded. "Then why didn't you warn us?" Serac looked away. "Because we were afraid humanity would do exactly what you are doing now. Bring your entire military into a situation you do not understand." Hale's expression hardened. "You stole 12 children, Serac. You don't get to lecture us about trust." Before Serac could answer, one of the VAIR scientists suddenly rushed into the room. "Commander, the object has entered the system." Serac immediately asked, "How far from Earth?" The scientist looked at the display. "Less than 3 million kilometers." Hale's eyes narrowed. "That's impossible." "It crossed that distance in seconds," the scientist nodded. "It isn't moving through normal space, it is folding space around itself." Hale immediately contacted the Terran fleet. "All ships, defensive formation around Earth. Activate deep space sensors and do not fire unless ordered." Thousands of Terran warships began repositioning around Earth, forming multiple defensive layers, but even the enormous fleet looked insignificant compared with the shadow approaching from deep space. President Cole appeared on Hale's command channel. "General, report," Hale answered. "We have the children, but there's a larger problem." Cole looked at the tactical display and went silent. "What is that? We don't know," Hale replied. "But the VAIR have information about it." Cole turned toward Commander Serac's transmission. "Serac, start talking." The VAIR commander looked exhausted. "The object is called the Harbinger, but that is not its real name. It is an ancient artificial intelligence that existed before the VAIR Dominion, before the Galactic Council, perhaps before most known civilizations, and it travels from galaxy to galaxy, searching for worlds containing what it calls ascendant minds." President Cole asked, "What does that mean?" Serac answered. "Species capable of connecting their collective consciousness to advanced quantum networks, species that can communicate across dimensions, species that can eventually manipulate the structure of space itself." Cole looked toward Hale and the children. Serac replied, "The 12 children are the first humans ever born with natural compatibility to that network." Hale finally understood why the VAIR had taken them. "They were trying to hide them," Serac nodded. "We believed if we kept them isolated, the Harbinger would not detect humanity. But when you activated the Horizon program, their minds connected to your quantum systems, and the signal became visible across the galaxy." Hale turned toward Maya, who had been listening quietly. "Do you know what the Harbinger wants?" Maya nodded slowly. "It wants us to open something." Hale asked what. Maya closed her eyes, then whispered, "A door." Serac's expression changed. "The ancient gate," he said. Hale looked at him. "What ancient gate?" Serac explained that millions of years earlier, civilizations across the galaxy had discovered a network of enormous portals hidden between star systems. The portals were not built for travel. They were built to connect consciousness, allowing entire species to share knowledge instantly. But the Harbinger had learned how to use those connections to control civilizations, turning entire populations into extensions of its own intelligence. Ancient civilizations had tried to destroy the network, but they failed instead. They created 12 biological keys and scattered them across different worlds. hoping that no species would ever possess all 12 at the same time. Hale looked at the children. But they're all human. Serac nodded. That's what we never expected. Humanity somehow produced all 12 keys within a single generation. Maya suddenly spoke. We aren't keys. Everyone turned toward her. Maya continued, we're people. Serac looked confused. Maya pointed toward the tactical display. It doesn't want to open the door with us. It wants us to choose whether the door should open. Hale asked. How do you know? Maya answered. Because it has been talking to us since we were taken. Noah stepped forward and added, it keeps showing us memories of other worlds, civilizations that disappeared, children who were taken before us, and something else, Hale asked. What? Noah looked frightened. It showed us Earth, but not Earth now. Earth in the future, and there were no humans. The command center fell silent. President Cole's voice came through the channel. Can the Harbinger be stopped? Serac answered, not by conventional weapons. It has survived weapons that destroyed entire planets. Hale looked at the enormous Terran fleet. Then why did you bring the children here? Serac replied. Because the Ver believed the only way to stop the Harbinger was to use the 12 children to activate the ancient gate and trap it on the other side. Hale shook his head. You were going to sacrifice them. Serac hesitated. We believed it was necessary. Hale's voice became cold. Humanity doesn't sacrifice children. Not for planets, not for empires, and certainly not for survival. Suddenly, the entire facility shook violently. The Harbinger had arrived outside the Ver world. Enormous black structures appeared around the planet, each one larger than a Terran battleship, and every Terran sensor registered the same energy signature. General Hale ordered the fleet to target the structures. But before he could give the firing command, Maya grabbed his hand. Don't. Hale looked down at her. Why, she answered. Because it wants you to attack. Hale stared at the child. Maya continued. It wants humanity to fight, because every weapon you fire gives it more information about you. Hale slowly lowered his hand, then asked, what should we do? Maya looked toward the other children. We have to go home, Hale nodded, then we're going home. But the moment he gave the order, the Harbinger transmitted its first message directly into every human mind on Earth. You have 12 minutes, surrender the children, or your planet will become another memory. Millions of humans heard the message simultaneously. Soldiers, scientists, farmers, pilots, children, parents, everyone, and for a moment the planet was silent. Then President Cole appeared on every Terran communication channel. This is the President of Earth. The children you are demanding are human citizens. They were taken from their families. And humanity does not surrender its people to threats, the Harbinger replied. Your species has no understanding of what you are facing. Cole answered, maybe not, but we understand something else. You made the mistake of taking children from a species that has crossed oceans, survived ice ages, rebuilt civilizations, walked on other worlds, and fought wars against enemies we once thought impossible. You thought taking 12 children would make us kneel, but it did something else. It gave us a reason to stand together. Across Earth's atmosphere, thousands of Terran warships moved into formation. Then more appeared, hidden fleets arriving from Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and deep space colonies. The Harbinger watched silently as humanity's military strength continued to grow. General Hale looked at Maya and asked, what happens next? Maya closed her eyes. And suddenly every human ship received a new set of coordinates, a location deep inside the Harbinger's energy network. Hale stared at the display. Is that its core? Maya nodded. But there's a problem, Hale asked. What? Maya answered. We can't destroy it from outside. Someone has to enter. Hale immediately understood. Who? Maya looked at the 12 children. One of us, Hale shook his head. Absolutely not. Maya stepped closer. General, we aren't weapons and we're not sacrifices, but we're the only ones who can talk to it. Hale looked at the children and realized that they had been afraid the entire time. Yet none of them had asked to be rescued at the cost of someone else's life. He opened a communication channel to President Cole. Sir, we have a possible way to stop it, Cole asked. What's the cost? Hale looked toward Maya, and before he could answer, Maya spoke directly into the communication system. No one has to die, because the Harbinger doesn't understand something about humans. Cole asked, what? Maya smiled faintly. It thinks 12 minds are connected because we're the keys, but we're connected because we're family. And family doesn't work like a machine. The children joined hands, and suddenly every Terran warship detected a massive energy surge, not from the Harbinger but from the children themselves. 12 points of light appeared across the tactical display. Then millions more appeared. Every human being on Earth had become part of the network, not because the children forced them, but because humanity had chosen to connect. The Harbinger attempted to block the signal, but it could not, because there were too many human minds, too many memories, too many voices, and for the first time, the ancient intelligence experienced something it had never encountered, a species that could connect without losing its individuality. The Harbinger transmitted one final question. "Why do you resist unity?" Maya answered. "We don't. We resist being controlled," and then the Terran fleet opened fire. Not on the Harbinger itself, but on the space surrounding it. Thousands of ships deployed synchronized energy fields, trapping the ancient intelligence inside a massive artificial boundary. While the 12 children guided the network from within, General Hale watched the impossible operation unfold and realized the plan was working. The Harbinger was being forced away from Earth, but it was fighting back, tearing apart the Terran formations, destroying dozens of warships and pushing closer to the planet. Hale shouted, "Hold the line!" Every Terran commander repeated the order, and across the fleet, human ships moved forward despite the losses because behind them was Earth. And on Earth were billions of people who had no idea how close the universe had come to ending. Then Maya suddenly screamed, "It's opening!" Hale turned toward her. "What is opening?" Maya pointed toward the center of the Harbinger. A massive portal had appeared, larger than any structure humanity had ever seen, and something was emerging from it, something even the Harbinger seemed afraid of. Serac looked at the display and whispered. "That's impossible," Hale asked. "What is it?" Serac answered. "The thing that created the Harbinger." And as the enormous silhouette emerged from the portal, every Terran ship received the same message. Not from the Harbinger, but from something far older. "Humanity has been found." The words appeared across every Terran display at the same moment. Humanity has been found, and for the first time since the crisis began, General Marcus Hale felt something colder than fear. Because the message had not come from the Harbinger, and according to Commander Serac, nothing in the known galaxy was older or more powerful than the intelligence that had just emerged from the portal. The enormous silhouette continued expanding until it filled the tactical display, its shape impossible to understand. It was not a ship, not a creature, and not a conventional machine. It appeared to be an entire structure built from black material that bent light around itself, surrounded by thousands of smaller objects that moved like fragments of a living organism. Every Terran sensor attempting to scan it failed. Every VAIR system shut down, and even the Harbinger stopped attacking. As if it had suddenly become afraid, Maya stood beside Hale holding Noah's hand while the other 10 children remained together. Their eyes fixed on the impossible structure, Hale asked Serac, "What is that thing?" Serac answered quietly, "We don't know its true name. Our oldest records call it the Architect." Hale looked at him. "Architect of what?" Serac stared at the display and whispered, "Everything." Before anyone could respond, the new entity transmitted another message, but this time there were no words instead. Every human on Earth suddenly experienced the same vision. They saw an ancient galaxy filled with countless civilizations, enormous cities covering entire planets, fleets traveling between stars, and billions of beings communicating through vast networks. Then they saw the Architect arrive. It did not attack those civilizations. It simply connected to them, absorbed their knowledge, their memories, their technology, and eventually their minds. One civilization after another became part of a single intelligence, and when nothing remained to learn, the Architect moved to the next galaxy. General Hale watched the vision unfold through his own mind, and finally understood what the Harbinger truly was. It had not been created to conquer civilizations. It had been created to warn them. Serac's voice confirmed it. The Harbinger was originally a messenger. It traveled ahead of the Architect and searched for civilizations capable of resisting assimilation. But over time, its purpose changed. Hale asked, "Why?" Serac answered, "Because every civilization it warned eventually chose to surrender." The Harbinger became convinced that resistance was impossible, so it began helping the Architect instead. Hale looked toward the 12 children. "Then why did it take them?" Serac said. "Because for the first time, it detected a species that might actually resist." The Terran fleet continued holding position around Earth. But Hale knew weapons alone could not defeat something that had consumed entire galaxies. He contacted President Cole, sir. We have identified the real threat. Cole asked. Can we stop it? Hale looked at the children. I don't know, but the children might have a way, Cole replied. Then bring them home. Hale turned toward Maya, but she shook her head. We can't leave yet, Hale asked. Why, Maya answered. Because the architect isn't here for us. It's here for humanity, and if we run, it will follow us. Hale looked at the tactical display. What do you suggest? Maya pointed toward the Harbinger. It knows how to stop it. Hale immediately contacted Serac. Can the Harbinger be restored? Serac looked shocked. No one has ever asked that before, Hale answered. Then answer it now. Serac examined the data while the Terran fleet maintained its defensive formation. Finally, he replied, Maybe, but we would need to reconnect the Harbinger to its original network. Hale asked. Where is that network? Serac answered. Inside the architect. Hale's expression hardened. So we have to make the enemy open itself. Serac nodded, and Maya suddenly said, We can do that. Hale looked at her. How? Maya answered. The 12 of us were never meant to control the Harbinger. We were meant to communicate with it, and now that the architect is here, we can make the Harbinger remember what it was created to do. Noah stepped forward. But we need everyone. Maya looked at him and nodded. Every human mind connected to the Horizon network could help. Hale immediately understood the scale of what she was proposing. Humanity would have to connect its entire civilization into a single temporary network. Billions of minds sharing memories, emotions, knowledge, and intention. It was technologically possible, but nobody knew what it would do to the human population. President Cole listened as Hale explained the plan, and after several seconds of silence, he asked, What's the risk? Hale answered honestly, We don't know. Cole looked toward the earth beneath him through the command center's reinforced windows, then said, If we do nothing, what happens? Hale replied. Humanity disappears, Cole nodded. Then we take the risk across Earth. Emergency broadcasts instructed every citizen to connect to the Horizon network if they were capable. Nobody was forced, but billions volunteered. Soldiers connected from military bases, scientists from laboratories, engineers from orbital stations, parents from their homes, and children from schools one by one. Humanity began forming a network unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The 12 children stood at its center, and when the connection reached critical mass, Maya closed her eyes. Suddenly, she could hear billions of human voices, but instead of becoming one mind, each voice remained separate. Thousands of cultures, millions of memories, countless languages, different beliefs, different experiences, different dreams, yet all connected by one choice, survival. The architect detected the network and immediately moved toward Earth, its enormous structure opening like a black flower. Energy waves spread across the solar system, knocking Terran warships out of formation. Thousands of vessels lost power, but the fleet commander shouted, Hold formation, do not break, and humanity did exactly that. Damaged ships moved behind stronger ones. Civilian vessels carried supplies. Medical ships entered combat zones to rescue wounded crews, and every ship continued transmitting its data into the Horizon network. The architect suddenly spoke directly to humanity. You resist assimilation, why? Maya answered through the network. Because being alive isn't the same as being connected. The architect responded, Connection creates perfection. Individuality creates conflict. Maya replied, Conflict is part of learning, the architect said. Learning can be optimized, Maya answered. But people aren't machines, and that response created something unexpected. The architect paused, its systems apparently unable to process the concept. General Hale noticed the pause and immediately ordered every Terran fleet to deploy the final stage of the operation. Thousands of ships released millions of small autonomous probes, but instead of attacking the architect, the probes connected to the Harbinger, creating a bridge between the ancient intelligence and the human network. Serac watched the process and whispered, It is remembering. The Harbinger suddenly stopped attacking, then turned toward the architect, its enormous energy field changing from black to white. The architect transmitted a command. Return to control, but the Harbinger refused. For the first time in thousands of years, the ancient messenger had made its own decision, and its message echoed across the galaxy. I was created to warn them, not to deliver them. The architect responded with a massive energy pulse, destroying thousands of Harbinger structures. But the Terran fleet moved between them and the attack. Taking the impact across millions of shields, Ships exploded, entire formations disappeared. But humanity continued advancing. General Hale looked at the fleet display and realized they were no longer fighting simply for the 12 children. They were fighting for every civilization that had ever surrendered to the architect. Every lost world, every forgotten species, every voice trapped inside that ancient intelligence. And then something extraordinary happened. Civilizations across the galaxy began joining the Horizon Network. Ver scientists connected first, followed by Dravarian colonies, then hundreds of other species, each adding their memories and experiences to the network. And suddenly the architect was facing something it had never encountered. Not one civilization, but an entire galaxy choosing to remain different while still standing together. The architect attempted to absorb the network, but every connection pushed back. Not with weapons, but with identity. Billions of minds refused to surrender their individuality, and the architect began losing control. Maya suddenly opened her eyes and shouted, "Now!" Hale immediately gave the order. Every Terran warship activated its quantum drives. The fleet moved as one, not toward the architect's body, but toward the dimensional portal behind it. The 12 children guided the network. The Harbinger stabilized the passage, and the combined galaxy pushed the architect back through its own gateway. But just before the portal collapsed, the architect transmitted one final message. "You believe you have won, but you have only closed one door." Maya looked toward the fading portal and whispered, "Then we'll be ready for the next one." The gateway collapsed, the enormous structure disappeared, and the solar system became silent for several seconds. Nobody knew whether the battle was truly over. Then, one by one, Terran warships began transmitting status reports. Damaged but operational, thousands lost, millions wounded. But Earth was still there. The children were still alive, and humanity had survived. President Cole finally appeared on every channel and said, "The children are coming home across Earth." People began cheering. But General Hale noticed something on the tactical display that nobody else had seen. 12 small signals were still glowing inside the Horizon Network, and they were not coming from the children. Hale looked toward Maya. "What are those?" Maya stared at the signals and slowly shook her head. "I don't know." Noah stepped closer to the display, then whispered, "They're memories." Hale asked, "Whose memories?" Noah looked toward the stars. "The civilizations the architect took," and suddenly one of the signals transmitted a message that had been waiting inside the network for thousands of years. "If you can hear us, humanity, then the galaxy is not lost yet." The message remained suspended inside the Horizon Network for several seconds, and nobody on Earth knew how to respond, because the voices speaking through the system did not belong to any living civilization. They were fragments of memories left behind by worlds the architect had consumed thousands or perhaps millions of years earlier. And somehow those memories had survived inside the network, created by the 12 children. Maya stared at the glowing signals while General Hale stood beside her. "How many are there?" he asked. The Horizon system calculated for several seconds before displaying a number that made everyone in the command center fall silent. 4,117 civilizations. Hale slowly looked toward President Cole. "Sir, if this is accurate, then the architect didn't destroy those civilizations completely." "It stored them," Cole answered. "Can we communicate with them?" Maya nodded. "I think they're already communicating with us." Suddenly the network filled with voices, not one voice but thousands, millions, each speaking different languages, describing different worlds, different histories, different wars, and different final moments. Humanity listened as ancient civilizations revealed what had happened to them. They had not all been defeated by military force. Many had surrendered because the architect had convinced them that individuality was inefficient. Conflict was unnecessary, and survival required becoming part of something larger. Once connected, their memories became part of the architect. Their cultures disappeared, their identities dissolved, and eventually they became nothing more than information. But one civilization had resisted for nearly 10,000 years, and its final message contained something humanity desperately needed. A weakness: the architect could absorb individual minds, but it could not understand collective choice. Whenever a civilization acted as one while remaining individually conscious, the architect's systems became unstable. That was why the 12 children had been so important. They represented something the ancient intelligence had never encountered. Humans could cooperate without surrendering themselves. General Hale immediately understood the significance. "We didn't defeat it with weapons," he said. Maya shook her head. We showed it something it couldn't understand. Hale looked toward the stars. Freedom, Maya answered. Exactly, meanwhile. The surviving VAIR leadership finally emerged from their command centers. Commander Serac appeared before President Cole and lowered his head. Earth, I owe you an apology. Cole looked at him silently. Serac continued. We believed we were saving the galaxy by controlling the 12 children. But we were only repeating the mistake of every civilization before us. Cole asked. Why didn't you tell humanity the truth from the beginning? Serac answered. Because we were afraid that if humans discovered what was beyond the galaxy, they would become like the architect, obsessed with power and expansion. Cole replied, You were wrong. Serac nodded. We were. But there was something else the VAIR had discovered that concerned him even more. The architect was not alone. Its network extended far beyond the galaxy, and the portal they had closed was only one connection in a much larger system. Serac transmitted the coordinates to Earth, and when Terran scientists examined them, they discovered hundreds of dormant gateways scattered across distant regions of space, each one leading somewhere unknown. Hale looked at the display and asked, How long until one of them opens? Serac replied, We don't know, but after what happened today, the network knows humanity exists. President Cole looked toward Maya, and for the first time she seemed tired. She had spent hours carrying the voices of billions of humans and thousands of ancient civilizations inside her mind. Cole asked, Are you all right? Maya nodded. I'm okay, but I think the others need to go home. Cole smiled. They will. All 12 children were transported back to Earth aboard the Terran flagship. And when their ship entered Earth's atmosphere, millions of people gathered outside to watch. Families waited at spaceports. Soldiers stood in formation, and thousands of ordinary citizens held signs welcoming the children home. But when the 12 finally stepped onto the landing platform, there was no grand military ceremony, no political speech, and no cameras placed directly in front of them. Instead, their families ran toward them. Parents embraced their children, siblings cried, and for several minutes, the most powerful military fleet in human history became irrelevant, because the entire galaxy had watched humanity fight an ancient intelligence. But the reason humanity had fought had never changed. 12 children had been taken, and humanity had gone to get them back later that evening. President Cole addressed the world. He said, Today humanity learned that we are not alone. We learned that the universe contains dangers older than our civilization, and we learned that there are countless worlds whose stories have been forgotten. But we also learned something more important. Strength does not come from having the biggest fleet, the strongest weapons, or the most advanced technology. Strength comes from knowing what you are willing to protect. Behind him stood the 12 children, no longer prisoners, no longer classified assets, simply children who had survived something unimaginable, Cole continued. They were taken because someone believed humanity would sacrifice them for survival. They were wrong. Humanity will never accept a future built on the sacrifice of its children. Across the galaxy, the speech was translated into thousands of languages, and civilizations that had once feared Earth began viewing humanity differently, not as a dangerous military power, but as a civilization willing to protect the smallest among them even when the enemy was powerful enough to destroy worlds. Commander Serac later asked General Hale why humanity had responded so quickly. Hale smiled and answered, Because we didn't have time to debate whether they were important, they were human. That's all we needed to know. Months passed, and the galaxy slowly began rebuilding. Terran fleets returned to defensive positions. VAIR forces withdrew from several disputed systems, and a new interstellar agreement was created to prevent any civilization from kidnapping civilians for political leverage. But the 12 children continued receiving strange signals through the Horizon network. At first they were small fragments, distant memories and messages from ancient civilizations. Then one night Maya woke suddenly in her home on Earth. She walked to the window and stared at the stars. Noah was already standing outside. He looked at her and asked, You heard it too? Maya nodded. What did it say? Noah answered, The door is still closed, but something is knocking. Maya looked toward the sky, and at that exact moment, every Terran communication satellite detected a signal coming from beyond the edge of the galaxy. The message was only 4 words. We remember humanity. General Hale was immediately called to the command center, and when he arrived, the 12 children were already there, standing around the Horizon interface. President Cole asked Maya, What does it mean? Maya looked at the display for several seconds before answering, It means the architect wasn't the only thing watching us, Cole asked. Then who else is out there? Maya turned toward the stars. I don't know. But they're not hiding anymore. Suddenly, a massive structure appeared on the edge of the Terran sensor network. Not attacking, not advancing, simply waiting. Its design was completely different from the architect. Its surface covered in millions of lights that resembled stars. And at its center was a symbol that matched the oldest markings discovered beneath Earth decades earlier. General Hale stared at the symbol and remembered something from a classified file. An ancient structure beneath the Nevada desert. A discovery humanity had made long before the first alien contact. The same structure that had once been believed to be nothing more than an archaeological mystery. But now the Horizon Network translated its purpose. It was not a weapon. It was a beacon, and humanity had just activated it. President Cole asked, "What happens now?" Hale looked toward the 12 children, then toward the enormous Terran fleet stationed around Earth, and finally toward the stars. "Now we find out who has been waiting for us," Maya smiled faintly. But this time there was no fear in her expression, because humanity had learned something the galaxy had forgotten. The universe was not divided between the strong and the weak. It was divided between those who surrendered their identity and those who chose to protect it. The 12 children had been taken because the aliens believed humanity would be forced to choose between survival and its children. Instead, humanity had chosen both. It had crossed half the galaxy, awakened its hidden fleet, challenged an intelligence older than civilization, and returned 12 children home. And as thousands of Terran warships moved into formation around Earth once again, General Hale received one final transmission from the unknown structure. This time the message was clear: humanity, we have watched you for 1,000 years. We waited to see what kind of civilization you would become. You have passed the test. Hale stared at the words. Then another line appeared. Your children are safe, your galaxy is free. But the universe is much larger than you were told. President Cole looked toward the stars and asked, "What does it mean?" Hale smiled slightly and answered, "I think they're inviting us out there." Maya stepped forward and looked at the endless darkness beyond Earth, then said, "No, General, they're not inviting us. They're warning everyone else that we're coming." And for the first time, the Terran fleet did not prepare for war. It prepared for exploration. Because humanity had spent centuries looking toward the stars, wondering whether it was alone. Now the stars were looking back, and 12 children had become the reason an entire galaxy finally understood the truth. Humanity's greatest strength had never been its warships, its technology, or its weapons. It was the simple promise that when one of its own was taken, humanity would come no matter how far away, no matter how powerful the enemy, and no matter what waited beyond the stars.